Big topic today brought to you by our Facebook group, Our Kids Play Hockey. This was an anonymous a reader put it on there, is when should a parent stop coaching? What age should a parent stop coaching? So Mike and I dive into this today fully. Also, start of the hockey season, and we really appreciate all of your love. We have just had the greatest month we've had in the history of this podcast. Most listens in one day, most listens in 1 week, most listens in 1 month, and that is because of you. So no sponsor today, just a big thank you from all of us here at Our Kids Play Hockey for helping us grow this podcast, and a humble request to share the podcast with your new teams, with your new parents, anybody you think that would benefit from the conversations that we have. We want you to share it, because at the end of the day, the three of us, we're just talking hockey, but we're really trying to create a better community for those hockey parents that just want to make it a better place for their kids and a better place for the game. So if you're inclined to do that, please share Our Kids Play Hockey. We're going to have a QR code you can share. We're going to have a lot of different ways to do it, but of course, word of mouth is the best. So please share Our Kids Play Hockey if you have the time. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for helping us find success with this show. And here we go. Let's dive into the episode with Mike and I about what age should a parent stop coaching. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, joined by Mike Benelli, and today we are going to be answering a question that was posted anonymously on our Facebook group, Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure you join it if you haven't. You have to answer a couple yes or no questions. It's a great group with a lot of great questions, a lot of great conversation, not competition, and maybe there's competitive conversation. Who knows? But Mike, someone wrote on an anonymous post asking the question to share their thoughts on when parents coaching their kids should stop. So today's episode is going to be, how long should a parent coach their kids? And as many of you listening probably know, some of you might have strong opinions on this. Some of you might be going, it depends. We have the great master level coach, Mike Benelli, on the air today. Mike, let's start with our thoughts on this. And then I'm going to dive into some of the comments that we got on this post, because as I said, it's a little bit around the board, right? I think a lot of it depends on location. A lot of it depends on organization. A lot of it depends on experience, right? But Mike, why don't you share your thoughts on this before we dive in?
Yeah, so full disclosure, I'm currently coaching my 16-year-old. An assistant coach. I'm on the bench though, and I am making an impact, I guess, on the who plays and who doesn't play and the lineup and all that kind of stuff. So there's so many variables to this that I think people get caught up in. Well, you're a parent, or you're his dad, or you're his mom, or you're his uncle, or you're on the board and that's why you're doing it. So there's a lot of different variables, but I think overall, my feeling is, it's always been this since the day I started coaching when I didn't have kids. The best quality person with the most knowledge that can guide and mentor the players on my team, the best is who I want there. Now, and if I'm a youth hockey organization, can I do that economically? Can that dad provide a lot of the things that I want? And, like in my case, listen, I coach. Well, I love coaching. I got to go to the rink anyway. My son's on the team. He's been great at allowing me to coach him. Like that's like almost getting that permission to be like, listen, I'm going to be on the bench again this year. Is that going to be okay? Because it's a lot of money. I'm going to be going all over the country, and I'm not a good guy sitting in the stands. so I mean, for me, it's really, I mean, maybe it's more about me than about him. But again, I think I bring a lot of, and this is in the majority of cases of parent coaching, that the parent brings so much to the table that it's only benefiting the other 15, 20 kids on the team at the expense of their kids. That's my experience in seeing this more than anything. And but again, I never seen it as a hard and fast rule. No parents, they can't coach, they shouldn't be on the bench. I think it's really a piece by piece, team by team decision. And then how long should they do it? Listen, this is youth hockey. I mean, there's some coaches that have coached their kids in pro, right? So I mean, right. I think it's, I actually just talked to a very prominent Division I coach, and his son is going to be going, looking at Division I offers, and he's like, I don't want my kid coming to play for me, but he wants to come play for me. So and this is at the college Division I level. So it's really, I think you got to look at it family by family and your circumstances. But overall, I would just say find the best qualified person and keep them on the bench as long as you can.
Yeah, look, and again, as we dive into this, like most things on the show, there's different ways of looking at it. I just wrote some notes here, right? There's personal reasons to or not to coach. Then there's professional reasons to or not to coach. And they're very, very different realms. And then looking through the comments, again, like most things, there's this kind of split around 12U, right? Of should it happen or not. I think everyone kind of unanimously agrees, like, Squirt, Might, Adams, it's expected, just because you need a lot of volunteers at that age. You don't need to have an extremely in-depth knowledge of the game. And I think USA Hockey does a really great job of helping new dads, new moms, just kind of say, okay, look, you got to get them skating. You got to learn these basic skill sets. Here's what a small area game is. So I think for the purpose of the episode, we'll just agree now that from a 12U down, right? I mean, again, Squirt, Might, Adams, it's somewhat expected. And we need those parents to keep the game going. It's just almost impossible, at least in the United States, Mike, to keep the game going without that. We should also note, though, we've said this many times on the show, you go over to Scandinavia, you go overseas, the best coaches are paid to teach that age group, because you want your best coaches teaching the new players, and that's how you have kind of a hockey developer system. Mike, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, no, it's just the most important time, right, for those kids' development. And their model is they have certified, trained teachers, like, and instructors and I think that the trainers, they call them, right? So I think that's important. And again, if you're in a youth hockey organization that can do that and not break the bank and understand that development is first, well, I'll tell you, it's just sometimes it might be a parent. Like you have so many good hockey people in your building. But again, so a lot of it just a lot of it's just you have good people like they do in Europe, and they're trained and they take your kids. Great, but we have to be really careful that the system doesn't implode on itself by the fact that you're paying somebody, $20,000 to be a head coach of a 10U team.
We should also note that different countries have different geopolitical systems that probably give a lot of funding to youth sports. You give and take with that. There's great parts about it. There's drawbacks to that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, when we look at that, the younger youth levels, you always hope that the dad or the mom or the coach is yearning for knowledge. One of the things I've really loved over the last 3 years now is seeing the game from a different point of view. I never got to play hockey at that age. I didn't start till I was 12. So to be able to experience the game through my 6, almost 7-year-old and my 9, almost 10-year-old for the last few years has been really fun. And again, I'm going to say this again, USA Hockey, I think, does a great job of providing the information you would need to be a successful coach. Now, when you get to that peewee and up level, I've got one comment here. I won't say the name because I know this person, but I know her kids play in a AAA organization, 12U and up. And they said that there's a cutoff there that 12U and up, they actually won't allow parents to coach. Now, what I'm curious about is this. There's a difference between volunteering to be a coach in Adams, and then, you're getting your coaching certifications and you become a pretty good coach, and then you get above 12U. Mike, this is where I'm with you, is that I want the right person for the job. I want the best person for the job. You're hoping at that age group that a parent can kind of, and again, this is where that professional and personal thing comes in, kind of separate themselves from that. Like I've had conversations with my own kids that, look, I'm your dad, but I'm also the coach. And I have responsibilities as the coach that apply to every child on the team. It has nothing to do with my love for you. It has nothing to do with how I feel about you. But as the coach, everyone gets treated the same way in terms of the hockey, right? So I don't know if I necessarily agree with there being a hard cutoff of no parent coaches above this age, although I imagine it makes it a lot easier for the organization when it comes down to spats or anything like that.
Yeah, and in my particular situation, it just it's really just actually a gift that the organization's giving to me. Like, they're allowing me to do this, and they know, like, well, listen, this guy's going to be in the building. How are we not using him? And I get to coach, and I'm not the head coach, so I get to be with a coach that I really like and respect, and I want to learn from, and I love that I can kind of hand my son off to him.
Right.
Yeah, even at any age. I mean, you're always, listen, I'd rather be on the bench, rowing the same way than throwing anchors out, up in the stands. And I'm not that person anyway. Like, I just never would be that person ripping on the coach or ripping on other players. But I in my circumstance, I almost, like, I really go out of my way to treat the other boys on the team like I want my son treated.
Right.
Like, so they're getting the benefit of, I think, in my, and maybe I could probably have to ask those parents, but of me saying, listen, I'm not going to sit here and just berate you and yell at you. And when I was a coach, when I was a coach of, and I didn't have kids, and I think we've talked about this a couple of times on the show, is like I was a completely different person. Like I was a completely different coach, because
Right.
I never appreciated, and this is before, we didn't have all this other educational pieces and discussions, and nobody really talked about what happens when the kids leave the rink, right? And I never really appreciated the fact that, those kids are going to go home to mom and dad, and they're hurt and they're disappointed and they're frustrated and they're, they want answers. And I'm like, listen, I'm the coach. Listen to me. That's all there is to it. And, shut your mouth and show up for practice. So the game's evolved. And I think, if you can find a good person that's evolved with it, I don't care what level it is,
Right.
that person be on the bench. But again, I've purposely, kind of set back, and I didn't even really actually even ask to help until after the team was picked anyway. Like I kind of took myself out of the mix. I said,
Smart.
let's see where we're gonna be. And then I don't want to be involved in the selection process. I just want to be involved in the teaching process.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and that's what I'm good at. And I think I could bring a lot of value to that. And I think financially, it's just like, for me, it's like, well, Jesus, if I'm going to be going I don't, it's crazy. I mean, at the 16, 17, 18 level, the amount of traveling these kids do,
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy. And then to be a part of, away from your family and family. I mean, so there's so much that goes into it. But, to me, I don't know if there's a cutoff age. I think there's an age where you want to leave and you want to cut those, that off. But if the staff's just not there, then I don't think there is a cutoff age.
Yeah, I think what I would say, there's an age of consideration, right? Where it's like, okay, who do we have in the mix that can coach at this level if we need them to? Like you said, if they're not there, you have to have someone volunteer to coach, right? And if there's a qualified parent versus a 19-year-old that just wants to get into coaching, I want the parent to teach the 19-year-old too. So forth and so on, right? By the way, yeah, I also want to echo what you said, because I know I get this question a lot with my friends in Squirt and Might about to travel at the AAA 18U. It's insane. It's like an NHL travel schedule. It's just less games. I mean, you're all over the country. It's pretty insane. So I'm with you, Mike. You want to have some control over that. All right, next comment here from Sarah says, my husband has been coaching our son since 8U. He is also 14U major now, and my husband has decided to pull away and stop coaching so our son can have his quote unquote time away from family with his buddies and with his space. It's hard because our son seems to enjoy dad out there, but really don't know if he's just saying that. And we want him to form some independence and autonomy. And then she says, to figure out what's right. There's no right answer. And, it's interesting because I feel like I'm at that place a little bit now. So again, just to reorientate everybody, I've got two kids playing. One's first year Mike now, one's first year Squirt. So now I have to make a choice. Right now I'm in this position where, okay, I can't be involved with both teams. So luckily my son's 10U team, the coaching staff was set. And I had full respect for that. I'm not going to push my way into a situation where I'm not being asked to, right? So I love it because my son is now in a position where he has to have that autonomy. And I also think it was a position where I needed to pull back a little bit and let him have his space. I was feeling that. That's the personal reason, right? Now, with that said, my daughter, who's the Mite, is like, will you come coach me? Like, will you help out? And I told her, of course I'll help out, because I did that for my son. I also, and Mike, you know this, right? You don't want ever one kid to think, well, why do you only coach with that team and not my team, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of had it set before the season that I was going to help out my daughter's team because I did that for my son, and I would like to do that for my daughter. Also, my son who's older, like he can handle it now. Like that was part of the job, right? For me was, hey, you can go do it yourself now. So I think it's just an interesting comment because, again, when you look at the personal reason, I don't care how qualified I am. If my kid wants some space, I got to respect that, right? Because I think, Mike, later on, if you don't respect that, both ways, obviously, it can be really detrimental to your relationship with your own kid. And I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, listen, I sat around these all these AAA, showcases and tournaments and rinks, and the dads in the stands are all, pro coaches, college coaches.
Right.
Like they're not coaching their kid. Like they're just like, listen, you're the coach, and those are the best parents.
I
Parents
agree.
that are coaches are the best parents, I think.
Right.
I mean, most of the time they're like, listen, so I do listen. I get a lot of benefits out of coaching because but I really do. I think I well, I don't think I know that the parents most wouldn't even know my son was on the team unless the only reason they know is because we have the same last name, but they don't know. I don't. It's just at the detriment of him probably. It's like, listen, I'm as easy and hard on all of them the same, but at the same time, you mentioned it about your little guys. So, it's funny. We had so the kids that I coach now are all getting their licenses, right? They're all getting like permits and licensing. And so they're really at the point right now where over the course of the year, between now and the end of the year, a lot of them will get their license and drive on their own. And the greatest comment I heard, I think all weekend was the one mom telling her son, like, hey, isn't it going to be great? You're going to get to drive yourself to the rink and go to practice on your own. And he's like, I'm gonna miss driving to the rink with dad,
Right.
like,
Right.
and I'm like, did he start crying? Like, when did he start crying about that? Like, I was like, how come I can't get that? Nobody's saying that about me. So, I mean, I think it's just, it all depends on the relationship. That's a big thing too. Like, when should you step down? Well, a lot of it's the relationship with your kid. If it's affecting your relationship in a negative way,
Yeah. Yeah.
then obviously, we all hear the horror stories. I'll get it someday too. It's like, oh my God, I hate it. Like yeah, but I'm always like, for me, I check in a lot. But you got to know your family, and you got to know your situation. And I think more importantly, if you are that coach that's going to continue to coach your son or daughter through, over 12U, 14U, 16U, then you better be articulating this to the other families about
Right.
why you're doing it, how important it is for them to understand that you want to help everyone, and how you can be the biggest benefit to their kid, and to their player. So, if you're going to be, and honestly, if I was coaching right now, like if I was back in coaching a professional team, a prep school team, a college team, I wouldn't have the time to coach. I just happen to have the time to coach. Now that's, neither here nor there. I don't know how to even, just like I'm here, I'm coaching. I like to coach. I'm available. I'd like to do it. Now, if I had, cause that's how I define myself. This is what I do for every day.
Right.
Right. So if I was an accountant or a stockbroker and I happen to coach my kid, maybe that's a different situation for those people, because at some point you want to give them, back again to the best qualified person that's going to advance them at the highest level. And if, Mike Sullivan lost his job tomorrow and his kid was a 16-year-old, I would ask Mike Sullivan to get on the bench with me. Right. If this person was on my, you see it all the time. Rod Brindamore's son played for Quinnipiac University this year, right? And if Rod Brindamore lost his job during the season, I think Grant Pecknold will call him up and be like, "Hey, why don't you come to this staff?" I mean, because you just find the best people.
Yeah, I think you also make a point. You and I are outliers in this, right? Like we're very unique examples in the way we approach it, because this is what we do for a living, right? But like you said, the accountant, right, that doesn't do it for a living. It's a great point you're bringing up here. Like I forget to think about that sometimes. That, like, hockey's what we do. So when it comes to, the dad that works construction, I mean, or whatever, right? It does driveways, does garage doors. It's a little bit of a different thing. The question is too, is, how much do you love coaching, right? I think there's also a point where it's like, oh, I'm doing this because they need a coach to, okay, I need to coach. I want to coach, right? It brings up a couple funny things too. We have to bring up the word nepotism here a little bit. Because I have been on teams, I have worked on teams where there is a parent and a kid, and it is clear that that kid is getting favorability from their parent. It's a very hard situation. There's not much you can do. And then commiserating happens, and why is that kid getting more ice time than everybody else, excuse me. Typically the kid is very talented at that point, but as a dad, I don't want to put my own kid in that position, right? Where they're having to deal with it. It's not the kid's fault, right? It's not anybody's fault. That's not the right word. But it's like, I actually don't want to be in a position where people are going to be giving my own kid any flack because I'm the coach. Right now, granted, I haven't had that yet. And the parents, I've been very blessed so far in my kids' youth hockey jersey journey, that all the parents have been fantastic. I've just had no pushback. But it's just something to think about, right? There's, I always talk about
Well,
putting
I've seen
ego aside. Go ahead.
right, and honestly, I've seen it worse, not as a dad coach, but the nepotism of the country club friend. Like honestly, I've seen
That's
coaches
a
that they're
great
not,
point. Right.
they're not the dad on the bench. They just happen to be friends with all the other parents, and that's worse. I think it because it to me it's like, oh well, of course this kid's playing. Like I watch it all the time. Like, oh, they're playing because they made the team because they're buddies and that's what they hang out together. Oh, every weekend on Facebook they're fishing together or they're playing golf or like, and then you wonder why the kid's getting extra or the worst is like the non-parent coach that has a private lesson skating and stick handling clinic that he makes the kids go to. And like and said, hey, you're going to play for me. You better show up at these clinics. You better show up these extra things and pay me. And I'm going to tell you how good you are. And then it's just a bad cycle. So again, it's all the circumstances you're in. If you have a pro coach, take the dad out, find me the best person.
Right.
And if you find me the best person that happens to have a kid that can make the team on their own and play and be a competent contributor to the organization, great. In my case, again, it's a little different, but like there's no coach that does what I do for a 16-year-old team that's a parent. So, between video and teaching and education and, making sure my podcast gets shared, on a daily basis, all that stuff is just at some point, yes, you have to let the kids go. I get it 100%. And I think a lot of guys I know and girls that coach their kids through like kind of the high school level are probably doing it because that's just what they do that's what they do.
Right.
They're not going out of their way to say, oh, I'm gonna jump in here because I have nothing better to do. Like I trust me, I'd much rather be able to hand my son off and be with, and I've done that. I think I've done that. I think I've handed him off to another human being that I trust and I can support. And I feel like another parent. Like I really try to be like in the game ends. I try to be a parent. I try to go, I don't want to be like, I even ask the people, like, don't call me Coach Benelli. Like I'm helping. I want to be on the inside track to help your kids.
Right.
And I can do that
feel
because I kind of have some inside information. Like I can help you, I can help you because I know that all our kids, because our kids are all the same.
Right.
They're all struggling at 14, 15, 16 years old. So help them all. That's how I look at it. And I think a parent is a whole different perspective. They really are than some guy who's coaching your kids at 16 that doesn't have kids, doesn't understand what happens when they go home, doesn't understand about girls, doesn't understand about the stresses of academics, doesn't understand the stresses of the home life because they don't, I'm not saying all, a lot, don't care. Show up at the rink, do your job, go home. That's my extent of my relationship with you. I think when you're a dad or a mom on the bench, that relationship, I think, from where I've seen it, goes deeper.
Yeah, I agree with
that. And if I can have that relationship, as long as I can, and if I can find people that can do that for me in other organizations, I think that's great. I think it's, and I'm sure as we get down through the comments, right, you see them that there are some ugly incidents, no doubt about it. There are some times when it's just like, what the hell? Like but you know what? We've talked about this a million times about picking your team. That going in, that's going to be a problem. So you went on that team anyway. So I think it's just, if you know that's going to be a problem ahead of time, then don't try out for that team.
Well, I'll tell you a couple notes on what you just said here. I wrote some down. Number one is that I am definitely a different coach since having kids and coaching my own kids than prior. I think that's a really important distinction. I really enjoy helping young coaches that don't have kids maybe see that perspective. I have no problem being an assistant on a team with a young coach that is open to being mentored. I think that I wish I had that when I was younger.
Yeah.
Right. I can also tell you this. I've said this a long time ago in a previous episode, but it's so tough to put into words. I care about those kids so much. It's not that I care about my kid more. It's tough to explain to a parent how much a good coach really cares about your kid. It's not just about the hockey and what they do on the ice. When you get to the professional level now, we're seeing changes in that, where it used to be, all right, you're a cattle and I'm herding the cattle and I need to win. Even now at the pro level, they're talking about you have to have a relationship with these players. You have to know them and understand them. Even though you could trade them, right? Like there's a whole nother layer to this, but one of the things I found crazy was that, over the last few years, like I really, really care about these kids. I want them to do well. You want them to succeed. You see them in the rink after you've coached them. How's everything going? And, sometimes they're shy, which is okay. The next thing you said, Mike, that maybe, I thought about this, I've had plenty of time now where I have been in the stands and not on the bench. My first few years was always on the bench because of COVID. And, I think by far one of the greatest compliments I get from people is them just asking me questions in the stands of like, hey, what would you do with this situation? What would you do? Because there's a clear trust that, I care. Right. And I really don't take those questions for granted. When a parent comes up to me and says, hey, what would you do in this situation? It means a lot to me. I've also realized, and anybody who knows me personally, this will make you laugh, but for someone who speaks for a living, I'm incredibly quiet when I'm watching a game. Even when my son's in net, I typically rarely say anything good or bad. Right. I remember he made a huge save the other week and everybody cheered. I just kind of was quiet. and people are like, wait, you don't cheer at all. And I was like, ow, I don't know how to explain that one. I mean, you can't really do that too much on the bench either if you're doing it right. Right. So it was, but
Yeah, you
I'm
kind of
just,
go into coach mode where
yeah,
you're
just
a
I'm
little more
watching.
even keeled. Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is that, and this is me personally, is that my gauge on my son's play or my gauge on his performance, that's a better word, is not based on saves or, goals against or anything like that. Same thing with when they skate out. It's not about how many goals did you score, how many assists did you make. I note that, I see that.
Yeah.
It's more of how did you conduct yourself as a person? Did you work hard the whole game? I can tell you right now, my proudest moments of my own son. I'm very proud when he plays great. Don't get me wrong, but I'm probably even more proud when he gets shelled in a game and he never quits. Right, keeping in mind he's under 10. Right, it's a little different when it's older, I guess. And well, maybe it's not. My point is this: is that when I see he's not giving up and he's taking care of his teammates, or my daughter who's young, when a kid gets hurt in Adams or when she's a mite now, she goes to make sure they're okay. That's a really proud moment for me. And I've heard parents get up, just get it. I'm like, whoa, buddy. All right, this is BS. I had a parent one time yell that this is bull. You know what? Because the kid's not getting up. It's like, whoa. But that's my gauge. It doesn't have to be everybody else's gauge. I want to read another comment here, and I do not want to gloss over this one. Christine says, I wish more moms were coaching. And I completely agree with her. I've been lucky enough in my organization this year. Multiple moms coached in our summer league. I've seen moms coaching on the bench. There's no reason why women should not be invited to coach as much as males in especially the Adams and the mite levels. If we're talking about getting into coaching, right? I'd love to see more women coaching the game of hockey.
Yeah, I mean, that's foreign to me. Like I said, a lot about a lot of things because I just like if you want to coach and you played what, where, yeah, get on
coach.
the bench.
Yeah.
Are you crazy? You're a coach. If you coach, you coach. And I think some of the best, I know some of the best coaches my kids have been women and men and young guys and young girls. Like I run I do lacrosse clinics every week, and our best teachers, which is I don't know, not I guess I shouldn't say this to the guys, but the best teachers are the girls that are out there because they just really have fun. There's no expectation, there's no like not it's not even expectations. They're just they're kinder, like and they're not yelling.
You better be careful, Mike, man. I've met some women.
No, I know. I'm just they're kinder. They're
Yeah.
kinder to the kids of being like, no, you're doing great. Like that's a really good thing you're doing. And the boys too, the high school boys, like they're not jaded. They're not like there's no expectations. Like young men and women that are like new to coaching, they're the best coaches sometimes. So if I can get a young lady that's just finished playing, a young man who's just finished playing, that's not in it for the wrong reasons. Like, listen, and we've talked about this too, right? About getting a new coaching job. Like the first thing you don't ask is how much does it pay? Because when you hear how much it pays, you're going to go, oh God, I don't know if I want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, no, you don't want to do this. Run away as fast as you can. But if you're going to do it for the right reasons and do it where, if you can, so her comment about she wished, I don't think that has anything to do with age. I think it has the organizational's, mission and their own kind of pool of candidates. But certainly, I mean, I don't I think the game needs more diversity across the board.
Agreed. Yeah.
And it's always great if your kids can get different voices. We're dealing with it right now. We have a couple of dads that coach their kids, and now they're kind of handing it off. And and I was joking. I said, yeah, well, I'm actually looking forward to doing that, after this season. I really am. Like, and I have a 10-year-old, so I have my squirt who's at the same question. Like, well, aren't you going to coach my team next year? I'm like, well, I can't. I don't have time to coach anybody, and actually, I don't even like coaching anymore. So probably not. I'm probably going to retire. No, but I will. I'll jump in. I'll ask if I can help. I want to be involved. Let me know what I can do, and if they'll have me, please. And if not, then I'm going to coach in the car. Like against the coach. So better have me on the bench.
Mike's trying to retire to become a full-time podcasting host. That's
Right.
the dream. No, my comments on this too is, like, I'm very proud my son and daughter have a female coach for their school team this year. I'm happily assisting her in whatever I can do. I think that I should also say this, and I got to preface this. In no way am I wording this like there's permission or anything like that, but I actually know a lot of women who just never even thought, oh, I could volunteer for that, right? And I want you to know you can, right? It's like, if you're interested in helping out and coaching your kids, you can do it. This goes for anybody, right? It's just, sometimes it's just not top of mind. And every female coach I've worked with has been wonderful. The other thing too is that I have learned, I'm like you, Mike, I never really cared who it was, man, woman, anything in between, race, none of that mattered to me. You got to be willing to learn from anybody. And I think that I've learned a lot from, especially looking at NCAA programs and professional women coaches. They've taught me a lot. I've just had my mind open to it. And, it makes me think this too. I wrote this down, and this is true for the whole conversation of just parents coaching. When your ego trumps your ability to grow as a coach, you're no longer a coach. All right. And Mike, you said this perfectly earlier when you were talking about, I was a very drastically different coach when I was younger. Exactly. You should have been. And you should be a very drastically different coach probably 15 years from now if you're still coaching. When your ego trumps your ability to grow as a coach, you are no longer a coach. Right. And that's one of the things about coaching. I am obsessed with learning more about coaching. I love learning more about coaching. I want to know what different people do. I love working with different personalities, people from different backgrounds, with different diverse backgrounds, because I always learn something. And if you look at my resume, you can see I've worked with a lot of crazy different teams that people probably wouldn't think of. And I'm always learning something. So I think that, whether your kid's on the team or not, if you have a drive to learn, to be a better coach, you're gonna probably be in the right place, right? I don't think too many of us do it for the money, Mike, to your point. I mean, most of us don't even get paid for the youth levels.
Yeah, it's like a wash, right? I mean, it's like if you get to coach your team, and the organization maybe saves some money by getting you, and you're a good coach anyway, and you can help out in other levels. It's an interesting question and subject that we have to answer as directors and program administrators,
Right.
and then come up with that philosophy. And I just like, I've always been like a guy who's like, don't paint yourself into the corner. I mean, I've told the story before, in New York, when I was a hockey director my first year, we had a no parent policy, in the youth hockey space. And a lot of it had to do with me, right? I'm like, well, I want to pay my buddies here to coach. And, I'll get all my college guys, all these guys are going to be coaching with me. I love it. And I don't have to answer to any of these parents, and we can, isolate ourselves. And so the organization's like, yeah, no parent coaching. And all of a sudden, Marcel Dion walks in the room with his two kids. He's like, hey, can I help out on the ice? And what the director's like, no, there's no parent coaching. I'm looking at him like, are you insane? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, you can come on the ice. I said, you're not even only an exception. You're like a wanted resource. So I think and again, and then maybe that goes to, the question is, are you a head coach, assistant coach, a skills coach, a helper, an advisor, somebody that you want to count on to help with the kids, even though you're a parent? Like, there's plenty. Look at all these kids around the youth hockey landscape right now that are high level executives in the NHL. You don't want that person's opinion. Like, right. You don't want that person's input. So
no, it's a great point.
I would say, I would say grab those people as much as you can and use them.
Well, and look, I think we're actually coming to an answer here too. Another comment here from Magnus. He wrote a really, really long comment. I can't read the whole thing, but at the end here, he says, short answer. If they're doing good at the job, it doesn't matter if they're a parent or not. If they're doing a bad, they should probably be replaced. So it really comes down to qualifications at the end of the day. Another one here from Dan, who's I know a huge listener of the show. He says, he's a coach. As far as coaching your own kid, I think it's more between the kid and the coach or parent. As long as the club is happy with the coach and they don't have a million accusations of favoritism or something like else like that, it's okay. And then he goes on to say that his son plays and that they have a conversation every offseason or before every season of, hey, are you okay with this? Do you want me to keep doing this? So Dan's doing a great job of like, it's not about me, right? And like I've seen the opposite of this. Like, well, I'm the 18U AAA coach. Well, that is great. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that trumps your relationship with your child. Keeping in mind too, it's only a few years that would be happening. And Dan goes on to say, I run clinics, private lessons, professionally educate coaches. So yeah, he's in the game, right? Like we gotta remind myself this, that if you're in the game and you're coaching consistently, at some point your kids are going to come through, right? And I just think at that point you have to make some decisions on whether you want to do it or not. There'll always be a place for you, if you're doing it right. But again, he goes on to say, it depends, right? Got another comment here. This one was interesting, and I think it's to your point, Mike. Jeff says, our league is literally built on the idea of dads coaching. If not them, then who? I will say, to the best of my knowledge, every coach we have has at least played through high school and all are certified through USA Hockey. So I don't know where Jeff is located, but that might be a location where there's not a ton of coaches to pick from. And they rely on the parents to kind of educate themselves and learn. I do want to go back that USA Hockey does a pretty good job, especially with qualifications. If you have to go through a certain amount of education to be able to coach, especially at the higher levels, not just going to let any schmo walk in off the curb.
Well, the coach developer program is literally the gold standard, for coaching education, and I think that's a great resource that we all have to take as parents and as administrators and youth hockey coaches. And again, it all comes down to, if you don't mind spending an average, what are you going to charge? An extra $800,000 per kid to have a non-parent coach?
Right.
Because you got to pay people. Their time it's their time. You're not going to get a lot of young or non-parent coaches out there doing it for free, and they're not doing it because they want to give up 26 weekends of their life for your kid. So you got to weigh all those things and appreciate the fact that you have a really good coach, dad, mom, the babysitter, whatever. Just have a good coach, and then have somebody that values your children. And the only other thing I would say too is just be approachable. Just don't shield yourself off to if you're going to coach your kid longer than the little youth hockey world. You just got to, probably, in my opinion, in my judgment and experience, just kind of open yourself up a little bit. You almost have to open yourself a little bit more to be like, listen, have a conversation with me, because I don't want you critiquing me behind my back, because when you do that, it your kids hear it, and then that affects my kid. Like, because so all of a sudden your kid gets kind of not blackballed, but kind of like isolated in that situation. So it's always, so I think it goes both ways for a parent coach that's coaching your kid into a level of, not just the little, the little kids.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll say this. Parents, all of us, including you and myself, we don't control the team typically, but we do influence it by what you say to your kids after a game or the lessons you give them. Again, we talk a lot about the accountability level of not blaming, but understanding the situation you're in and learning to grow past it. Parents, you play a major role. We're all coaches at the end of the day in that regard. We're all coaches to our kids. But yeah, Mike, I think, again, just some actionable items. If you are a parent coach, really no matter the age, but as you get older, you should be leaning on this more. Definitely have a conversation with the parents before the year. Have a conversation with your own kid before the year. First off, make sure they understand the expectations of you as a coach and as a parent, and then talk to the parents. Let them know, my kid's on the team. This is the rules that we have decided that everyone's going to adhere to, including my child. If you have any questions or any problems, don't commiserate. Please come up to me and talk to me. And then you got to be true to your word. Like, I've met a lot of yes people in my life that say one thing and do another. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the world. That's not just youth hockey. right? But high levels of integrity. If you find someone with a high level of integrity, the knowledge, communication skills, trust, I mean, I don't care if they're a parent or not at the end of the day at that point. That's a good person to have on your bench, right? And again, look, if you can get the money and get a highly qualified coach that's going to do a great job, that's great too. At the end of the day, it's one of those episodes. There's not going to be a concrete answer. It depends. It depends on the age, depends on the level, it depends on the location, depends on experience. I also want to tell this story too, that great coaches typically are great coaches. There's a story about Vince Lombardi, who was one of the greatest football coaches of all time, coaching a basketball team to a championship, having never played the game. He's just a great coach, right? So it's not limited to just your knowledge of the game of hockey, right? I mean, hopefully you have some of that, but it comes down to just, like I said, integrity, the type of person that you are. I think that being a parent adds a little spice onto that equation, but it's not the meat, right? It's not the chicken or the poultry or the fish or, tofu if you're vegan. I'm trying to include everybody here, but you understand. But Mike, that was all the comments. This is a little great episode here. It was a great topic. And just like the comment section, a lot of discussion, a lot of different points of view. For those of you listening, obviously, we want to know what you think. When you see this posted or you're listening, write us an email at team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. Feel free to put a comment on our Facebook page. Again, I know not everybody's high on Facebook, but they do a good job with the group stuff. You can find us, Our Kids Play Hockey, on the groups. Again, you have to answer a couple yes or no questions to get in, but the conversations we have really continue on there. And that's growing all the time. So if you're looking for other like-minded parents around the world, because we do have listeners around the world, it's a great place to go. Mike, before I close this out, I want to let you know if you have any other final thoughts on this.
No, I think you summed it up. I mean, it's all the circumstances you're in, and it's a case by case basis most of the time. More times than not, as the kids get older, you'd love to see them. That's why people go away to school, right? That's why, and for instance, like on my situation, I don't coach my own son at the high school level. That's season starts and he's got his own coach, and I help with the bake sale and do chuck a puck, I guess, and do the things that the other parents do. But the bottom line is, it's all the circumstances you're in, and then what the needs are. And if you can fill the needs and help with some circumstances, great. If you don't need to and you can step back, I don't know, even better, I guess. Just gauge it and then be fair and be open and responsible to discussions. And I think it solves a lot of other issues. Just like everything else we talk about, just a little communication always makes things easier.
Always comes back to communication. And I want to close this out by communicating to all of you another big thank you. So in the last month, in the month of August, which is not traditionally a hockey month, had our best day, our best week, and our best month ever in terms of listeners of this program. So we want to thank all of you for doing that. Remind you, as this is the season now, we're in the season when you're listening to this, please share this with the other parents. Please share this with your organizations, not just for our behalf, but because we know this conversation is happening in rinks around the United States and the world, and we want to be a conduit for those conversations. Not about us, right? It's about all of us listening and making sure that we can continue to grow that community. So again, if you're inclined, share this episode, share the page, ourkidsplayhockey.com, and remember, all of the episodes will be here this entire season. We're going to be here with this Ride to the Rink and Our Kids Play Goalie here on Our Kids Play Hockey. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Take care. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.